Mic, camera, action.
This fucking asshole.
You pair of sausage nidles. How do you sleep at night? I'm from Peter. This is animal cruelty, you fuckers. Hello.
Hey, give that back, you liberal freak.
Yeah.
Dude,
Fucking shame on you two.
that's $250.
Pair of cunts. Press the
We'll
fucking
take it
button.
back. Hit him.
Listen.
Disgusting.
Oh, well, then-
Mama be so proud.
Sorry about that. Give me that thing.
No?
Yeah, there you go, go on. You don't press that fucking button, you're going in the pond.
I'm pressing
Press
it.
it!
Welcome back to the Filmography, the show dedicated to watching every credited film for an actor's complete back catalogue, from past debut through to present day, in chronological order. Each episode, I'm joined by an esteemed guest to watch and discuss the next entry from the focused filmography and consider how it ranks amidst their career and whether we can trace any typecasting trends or topic traits or theatrical tics. For episode 21, I'm joined by geek champion and nom de misnomer SuperDummy Paul to discuss the 21st big screen appearance of the Stath in the cranked all the way up to 11 sequel, High Voltage. We watch, you listen, and hopefully watch along too. So, Paul, thank you very much for returning to the show to discuss the Stath's unexpected return to the hitman with a big heart and a big in Crank 2.
Yes. Thank you so much for having me on again. Absolute honor. Yes, it's all about the big things here. In Crank 2, things get crankier, or as you may think of it, Crank 2, who went to the same school of sequels as Speed did.
Yeah.
Take your basic idea, change a couple of words, see how it goes.
It's true. I mean, at some point we'll talk about, like, I read a really interesting interview with Taylor from the Neville Dean Taylor partnership 10 years on, and how he views this and what their intentions were. But yeah, that Speed 2, that's an interesting one, because obviously Speed 2 transfers to a boat and slows right down.
Yeah, but otherwise it's the most hilarious sequel ever.
Oh man.
It's basically, if you've seen Speed, take that, and every time the word bus is in the script, cross it out and write boat.
Sure, yeah, sure.
Because when it gets to the point that in Speed, obviously, they have the bit where they run out of road and it's all a big drama.
Yeah.
In Speed 2, they somehow managed to write in a bit where the boat runs out of sea. So they're just like, yeah. So that's the Speed school of sequels.
Yeah. I hear.
Crank 2 isn't quite as bad as that. But it's close.
But it is, yeah, it's pretty close, yeah. I will say it does feel at times there's minimal effort in trying to do anything new, but I think that is by design.
Yeah.
Because they didn't want to do it, to be perfectly honest. The studio said to them, this done well, come back and do a second one. And they were like, but we killed him. Like, we purposely wrote a film where our protagonist, we won't use the word hero, but our protagonist died. We can't. And then I think other people had to go at the script, and they didn't like the scripts that were being produced. And then they came up with the concept, which we're going to talk about, and they were happy with that, and they were going to give it off to another director or directors, because they thought, we can't direct this again. We don't want to go through all of that. And what are we going to bring new to it? And then I think ultimately they couldn't then envision somebody else directing it. So they were like, okay, we'll do it. So the whole thing kind of has almost a sense of, not reluctance, that's maybe a bit strong, but I think you're right, that sense that this is kind of the same film again, but a bit more, is exactly what they were going for.
Well, I mean, yeah, I think that's where it does diverge from the the school of segues, because if you write down the basics of it, you're going to come up with sort of very similar beats, but it's done in a more intentional way, and it does feel that way. If you think about it for a few minutes, you're a bit like, but hang on, didn't that happen in the other one as well? But when you're watching it, because I watched the first one again yesterday, and then I've watched this one this afternoon, and even watching them that closely together, it wasn't immediately like, oh, come on, guys. You can recognize it, but it wasn't slapping you in the face with it.
Yeah, that's it. I think intentional is a really interesting word to use as we keep going through all the different elements of this sequel. Intentional, that's a really interesting word, because are they intentionally pushing the envelope? Are they intentionally being this transgressive, or are they intentionally being this offensive, or is it something that is inherent to them, or something they've done thinking it's cool, or is it all knowing? I think we'll have to keep coming back to that idea. I think that's really interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. There are so many things in here where, just depending on how you view it, the mindset that you view it in, like, spoiler alert, it is entirely possible you will watch this film and then get very offended and very angry. In many different ways. Many different ways.
Yeah.
And it's all about how you view it. And I think this is one of those films you would love to have like a proper commentary on, like a deep, honest commentary. What were the thoughts and what was the thinking behind every step of it? Because it would be fascinating. And yeah, you're right. Just sort of, how knowing is it? How intentional is it? If you put those question marks on basically every moment of this film, you could go in many different directions.
Yeah, you could. We know we know their school of filmmaking is quite improvisational, experimental. It's in the moment, isn't it? We talked about that on Crank when we discussed that first movie, that it was those two guys on rollerblades skating around with cameras each, kind of capturing moments. It was quite loose in that way, and I know that definitely carried on here. I read that they used what were called, I think, prosumer cameras. Like, they literally bought them from Best Buy. They bought them from like supermarkets, where they knew that they were lightweight, they could move them wherever they wanted. They wanted that kind of more grainy, grimy, kind of real in inverted commas, like capturing something for real look. But they also knew, like, if they're on rollerblades or they're hanging out of a car, and it gets dropped and it gets broken, well, fuck it, who cares? Because it only costs this much. So they can keep taking these chances and keep getting themselves in situations. So definitely that kind of indie, free-spirited, in the moment nature continues in this movie, doesn't it?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's very, and it does feel that way. You can feel from every bit of it. It's dark, it's gritty, it's, fly by the seat of your pants, it's do what you want, it's just as crazy, it's, you don't follow rules. You definitely don't follow rules.
No.
But if you took this to a film school and then sort of said to them, right, we've done all your lessons, you know how to make a film, how would you make this? And if you took it to every single film school in the country, I very much doubt anyone would come up with this film.
Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. They are a force of nature by themselves, aren't they? 100%. Yeah. And I think that needs to be applauded. Like, nobody else at this point in time could have made this film, I don't think.
No.
Nor would have dared to.
No.
Nor maybe should have.
No, probably not.
I guess we'll see where we fall in there as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of question marks in this film. Like, it is just the like you say, it's how intentional, how knowing is it, and the how, just a lot of how. How did they get this past a lot of different people?
Oh yeah, I've got a story about that.
I
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
I'll be interested to hear that, because yeah, the how should this film have ever been made is a massive question mark. And yeah, I mean, that story of, you're saying that it was basically either they do it their way or they're gonna have someone else do it. Who knows? I mean, yeah, no one else could have made this sequel.
No.
They are, as you say, they're a force of nature all by themselves. If anyone else tried to make this sequel, it would be absolutely bizarre. It's like listening to Chris and Dave talking about one of their sequels, and the only thing that has to do with the first film is it shares a name. Right?
Sure. Yeah.
It would be one of them.
Yeah. It would. I guess the steak would have still been in it, but that would have been the only connector. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I mean, and even then, like, would he have been? Who knows?
Well, yeah, good point. Without them,
unless he was contractually obliged.
yeah, which I assume not, because
No.
they had no intention of making a sequel. Yeah.
No, and if it's none of the same people attached, you kind of got to think: would he have looked at the script and gone,
Yeah.
if it doesn't have the same sort of charm and oddballness of the first one, does it work? I mean, he's done weirder films, admittedly, so maybe
he's certainly done worse films.
Yeah.
Some of which I've covered already.
Yes, indeed.
Some of which I'm sure I'll be covering in the future too.
Yeah. But yeah, it's hard to know. Like, it could have been one of those. Like, would he have done, or would they have had to do like a complete curveball and sequel, kind of in name only?
Yeah. Because there are other films which are sort of in the back of my mind as I was watching this. So, you said you watched Crank yesterday, then you watched High Voltage today. I actually did them both. I literally had a Friday night to myself, so I did back to back.
Oh, I bet that was an experience.
3 to 3.5 hours of Crank, yeah. And yeah, we're going to have to talk as we go about like how we feel about the two compared to each other as well. But I think, like, what would it have been like? Who could it have been like? This film's like they've seen Shoot 'Em Up with Clive Owen.
No, I don't think I've seen it.
Which is like a action movie pastiche, if you like, very knowing, but pushes the boundaries. Or like Drive Angry with Nicolas Cage. So sometimes they're similar feeling movies that could almost kind of exist in the same world.
Yeah.
But nowhere near as chance taking as these two films are.
No.
Which I think that's what we would have got. We would have got a watered down version of Crank if it hadn't been Neville Dean Taylor, it hadn't been the Stath, it hadn't been the original cast and crew coming back together. And I wouldn't have wanted to see that.
No. Yeah, it's hard to think that you would have, like, even if it was the same script, but it was directed by someone else, it's hard to think that the studio would have looked at the script and looked at your normal director and gone, yeah, sure, you can pull this off. It was only because of the absolute ridiculousness of the first one, and they pulled it off, that I imagine they probably just went, sure, whatever. Like, what can we say?
Yeah. More of the same, please, is what they asked for, because it made money.
Yeah.
And actually, you're spot on. So what I said about the story, it was very much whatever. So what I read Taylor said was, we haven't even got to the film yet, but let's just jump to the end. Right towards the end, when he's meeting up with the ferret.
Yeah.
And we find out that Verona, the main bad guy from Crank's head, is in a jar in Futurama style.
Yeah.
Taylor said they rewrote that as like a 4 a.m. rewrite as a test to see whether the studio were paying attention to what they were doing, and nobody gave them any notes. So he only can presume that nobody checked, because it wasn't the original script. And he was like, "Do you think they're checking? We just seem to be getting whatever we want and doing whatever we want." And then, yeah, let's do this. This will be funny. Let's see what they say. No notes. So his presumption is they weren't reading any of the rewrites and weren't checking the dailies.
Yeah, I mean that makes absolute sense then, because
Mm.
there's just yeah, that's not even the weirdest scene of the film.
No, that's why we get the weirdest scene in this film, because nobody said, no, you can't do this. Although I'm really glad they didn't. I'm really glad they didn't, because
Yeah.
it is the highlight of this movie without a doubt.
Yeah, that's as far as payoffs go. That's just fair enough.
Yeah.
You've earned that. We'll let you have that one. In any other way, you'd be like, okay, fine, this is bollocks. I'm turning it off. But no, you kind of just stand up and applaud them at that point. Well done.
in this crank world.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. I've suspended my disbelief and my any attachment to reality I have that sure.
Yeah.
I'll allow you that.
So you rated Crank a classic. I don't know if you remember that.
Vaguely.
Yeah. So of my three categories, you were well on. You thought Crank was a classic within the Stath filmography, and like you absolutely must watch it. Coming to High Voltage, this was a rewatch for you, right? You had seen it before.
I had, yeah, a long time ago.
Sure. So today's rewatch was the first time since then?
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, the first time in probably about 10 years.
Sure. So how did you feel coming into it? Were you excited? Could you remember much? Like, where was your brain at as you came in to watch it?
Yeah, so I remembered it was just as wacky and bizarre and crazy.
Mm-hmm.
I remembered that at the time, my enjoyment levels were sort of matching the first, in that it was just complete, absolute bonkers, and suspend your disbelief and go for it, and it's a wild ride, and you love every minute of it. That was kind of the only things that I remembered going in. Some of the vague, like the main, plot changes from the first one, and the vague idea of what goes on. So yeah, I was going into it pretty high hopes, thinking I'm definitely going to enjoy this. This is, I'm going to sit down for an hour and a half of good times. Yeah, no, I was looking forward to it.
And they're both good for that, to be fair. They're both like
Yeah.
pretty hard 90 minutes.
Yeah.
Like it's quite hard to find a time to fit that scale. So they're both pretty good for that. Like you're going to get in, you're going to get on with the story, you're going to get out within a kind of 90 minutes. They're good for that.
Yeah, you definitely don't have to worry about any slow lead into it.
No.
Yeah, you're not going to have 20 minutes of exposition at the first bit and all right, this is a bit of story. Now get into it. No, you don't have to worry about that so much.
Definitely not. And you feel, as we'll talk much more as we go, but so you do feel like watching it in now close proximity to Crank affects your enjoyment of it?
Yeah. Maybe that's because obviously I was watching it for this. I was thinking a little bit more about it. But yeah, watching them close together, you do see some of the I don't know if change of mentality is the right phrase, but that you do see a little bit of something there. Maybe it is that idea of no one was checking, so they just absolutely went for it. Maybe that does explain some of it. There is a bit of a noticeable change in the way that some of the things are approached. And yeah, I think that would be the main thing. Like, obviously, there are the similarities, but you get over them quite quickly.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think that change of mentality seems to come across a bit more. Whereas the first one was obviously crazy and didn't care and doing what they wanted, but they also seemed to mostly stray within certain lines. Whereas this one, every now and then, just as you get comfortable, it'll wiggle out of that line and then wiggle out of this line.
Definitely.
Just to sort of make you feel a little bit more uncomfortable.
Yeah, a hop, skip, and a jump, or a rubbing out of the line completely, or setting the line on fire, in fact, is probably more likely.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great summation of the difference between the two. This feels more raw, it feels more unleashed, it feels like, as you said, fuck it, we'll do whatever we want then, if that's what they're saying. So we really, really will.
Yeah.
Absolutely. The first one feels a little bit more, which is weird to say, but a little bit more studio, I suppose. It's not at all, but by comparison, it is.
Yeah, that's really interesting because, it's easy to look at a film like Crank and then just be like, oh, this is director's gone wild and all this sort of stuff. But then you look at Crank 2 and you think, oh, no, actually, yeah, like they were pushing some boundaries, but they had some control and people were talking to them.
Yeah.
There were some rules that they were going by.
Yeah.
And it does make you think about those boundaries in cinema a bit more, that Crank is a bit wild, but it's it's in a studio environment and these are the things you can do with cinema and not be too getting banned.
Yeah, definitely. So this one opens with a repeat of the end of the movie, doesn't it? And this was my first talking point for you, because I remember that being one of your main criticisms, was the end kind of being the one moment where you felt like it sort of lost you, and the graphics were a bit poor when he's falling down back to the street. This time they recreate that, but in 8-bit. What did you think?
Yeah, that was definitely a nod to the critics, shall we say. There are certain points to that. Yeah, they were just a bit like, yeah, okay, whatever. This what happened. Deal with it.
But kind of fits our pattern of what we were talking about. We said it was almost like a computer game, didn't we?
Yeah.
And it was him going through the levels, and we were saying that Eve was almost like an NPC, weren't we? Until a bit later on, and she sort of gets a little bit of agency or a little bit of character. So I wonder if there was some of those kind of comments being made, as you just touched upon, and it was a little bit like, you think we're making a computer game? Well, we literally are.
Yeah, because I have read some bits here and there where they are influenced a lot by media and by culture, and in particular video games. There are references throughout both films, and obviously people recognize that, people notice that. My very favorite IMDb trivia section, it does pick up on that, and I guess part of it for them on this one was just like, yeah, okay, you noticed, you enjoyed it, we'll lean into it a bit more. The bits where there are a few moments like that where in the first film they didn't quite have the budget maybe, but they gave it a bit of a shot and they hoped it would all stitch together. In this one they just went, we don't have the budget, so we'll do something silly instead. We'll make it a bit more video gaming. You seemed fine with that, so let's turn that up to 11.
Yeah. Oh yeah, definitely.
Yeah, and it did work.
Yeah, they try a lot more. I thought it was fun. They try a lot more things out in this, and don't they? We have like the later on when Chev is talking to Doc over the phone call, we get that repetition of that first movie when Chev wakes up and he finds out what's going on with him in this one, which we'll get into in a sec. He calls Doc up to get some advice, and we get like a slideshow science lesson coming up on the screen. So we have a few more little moments like that, don't we, where they come out of the world and they do something playful.
And it seems to work as well. Like that bit, that was like a weird, let's get technical for a minute, but in a sort of fun, informational kind of way, and it kind of worked. It's like, if you describe to someone, okay, this is this really crazy film, but a few minutes in, we're going to have a nice minute of some information for you, which is apparently real information based on a real device that exists and is out there. And like, You'd just be like, why? But it works.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, what they would say is, of course, why not?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
And fuck off and fuck you for asking. And they'd say that too, probably, but
Yeah, probably. Yeah. Yeah.
definitely they'd say why not.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, they seem to have the right mentality of why not. It's not why not, and then it just gets stupid. It's why not, but it also fits.
Yeah, agreed. Yeah, definitely. Speaking of fitting, do you buy the premise for this movie? So Chev miraculously survives the unsurvivable Chinese poison
Yeah.
and a fall from whatever 1,000 feet,
Yeah.
which they do reference in the film, which I like. They reference in this sequel. They say, like, it has been known to happen. People's parachutes haven't opened, they have survived. So I do like they reference the fact of the unlikeliness, but it does occur.
Yeah.
Do you like where this film picks up and why Chev finds himself in a similar situation?
Utter bollocks.
No.
Do
you want to explain the utter bollocks?
Yeah, so basically they decide that Chev has managed to survive all of this, so he must have this amazing heart that's able to, as you say, survive the Chinese shit, survive the fall from the helicopter. That's less to do with his heart, I suppose. But then there's this other leader who we see later on, who needs a heart transplant. Lots of people in the triad apparently would willingly give their heart up to him because, he's their leader. However, who's better heart to have than the guy who survived the Chinese shit?
Absolutely.
So they rip his heart out in a room which you might describe as a clinic. If you're lucky.
People putting their cigarette ash in your open wound and spitting in it. And sure.
I mean, there was doctors in there.
Yeah.
So they take his heart out to give to this guy. Okay. Up to that point, I'm like, sure. Then they fit him with an artificial heart, which has an internal battery, which lasts about an hour, and then an external battery pack, which they put around him, which then helps to give him a bit more time.
I think they say about 2 to 3 hours, don't they? Extra.
Yeah, something like that. So under normal circumstances, the battery pack gives you a couple of hours. Then once that runs out, you've got an hour on the internal battery to change it up, charge it up, live. Why?
Well, he has some other organs they want to take, doesn't he?
Yeah.
So they say they're going to harvest all his organs, essentially, don't they? Because they call him Superman, don't they?
Yeah.
He's got Superman heart. He's Superman. And they're going to take all his organs just to test them, and if they're any good, to use them. So they're going to keep him alive with this artificial heart in order to do that. But there's one particular organ they feel like they definitely need to take.
Yeah, definitely need that one.
Because it's so impressively big.
Yes. I'm curious what they're going to do with that.
Sure. I don't know how penis transplants work, whether you could just cut it off and put a new one on and it'll work. But
I'm not a doctor, but...
we didn't get a slideshow of that, sadly, so we don't have anything to fall back on.
No, that is true. Maybe that's in the extended cut. South Park style. As far as premises go, that was a shaky ground. Luckily, they don't sort of sit on it for too long. They quite quickly move on to other things. It's a weird premise. But I also don't think they care.
No, they absolutely don't. It's not as clean as the poison, is it? It's not.
No.
But what it does do, and this is the sole reason why they do it, really, is to provide the opportunity for him to continue electrocuting himself. That's all it's about, isn't it? Because very quickly he wakes up, fights his way out, which we will talk about, I'm sure. but then he quickly loses the external battery pack.
Yeah.
So he has to keep jolting himself. He has to keep electrocuting himself in order to keep powering up the internal battery in whatever way he can. So that's the sole purpose for it, really, isn't it? To keep putting the Stath in mad situations where he has to get electric shocks.
Yeah, basically. Yeah. First one, Chinese shit. He needs to keep his heart rate up. Second one, fake heart. He needs to keep his battery charged.
Yeah.
And that's basically, they should have just said that at the beginning. They should have just had a bit of a blur and then said he has a fake heart now and he needs to keep his battery charged. Let's just move on. Just accept it and move on. Yeah, it is basically just that, as you say. Is they need some sort of premise for him to keep doing what he was doing in the first film, just over and over again. He needs something. He needs something that, because otherwise he would just run through the streets, kill all the people we needed to kill, and done. Ta-da, happily ever after.
Yeah, he needs that consistent barrier, doesn't he? He needs to keep being thwarted, or he has to go on a side mission to charge the heart in order. Yeah, you're right. Otherwise, it would it'd be over in 10 minutes.
Yeah, basically. Yeah, he'll just drive across town, speak to a couple of people, sorted.
Yeah,
but he
kill
needs
him,
a
chop
weakness.
bits off.
Yeah.
yeah. You're right, and he needs. That's a good way to put it. He needs to be brought down to the level of those that he's facing because he's so superior to all of them in terms of skill and strength and desire that he needs to be brought down to the level. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it works if you don't think about it too much.
Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. I do think it sets its stall out, doesn't it? Because I think obviously we were both doing a rewatch this time. That I guess the first time you're going to watch it, you do worry a little bit. Is it going to be watered down? And then you get an 8-bit opening, and that's that's fun. And he gets scraped off the pavement and put in a van. But then when we're in the movie proper, it's like open heart surgery, like we said, ash being from a cigarette being flicked in there. Threats of cutting off the penis, which is what wakes him up out of the kind of the drug infused stupor. But I think the thing that told me that this is definitely not going to be watered down is when he tortures that poor guard outside with the oil lubricated shotgun up the arse. I was like, oh, okay, that's the level we're at here. That's the level we're at. It's not watered down. In fact, it's lubricated up.
Nice. Yes. Yeah. It's quite quickly like, don't worry. We're going to just go straight into it again, and we're going to sort of ramp it up. It was quite brutal straight from the beginning. And it gets like, there's a couple of jokes, of course, it has to throw in straight away. Like I wrote down in my notes, he die hard with a vengeance.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Immediately, like within the first sort of 5-10 minutes, you're like, these are the points we're going to tick off along the way. We're going to have lots of references. We're going to have silly jokes. He's going to beat a lot of people up, and it's going to be brutal.
Yeah.
There you go.
You're right. It's a much more quotable movie than the first one, I have to say. I think the lines of dialogue in this, you maybe wouldn't want to say many out on the street to people you meet randomly. No. But again, like they knew they were writing it for Statham at this point as well, don't they? So they're writing some Cockney rhyming slang. He's got me strawberry tart and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I do feel there's some particularly risky, quotable lines in this, which are really funny.
Yeah.
That they are offensive.
Yeah.
Normally they're insults towards people, which can totally be taken offensively. But we're back to that conversation, and we're going to keep going back to it. Is it transgressive? Is it knowingly offensive? I think a couple of them are.
Yeah.
And we get a few of them in the next scene, don't we? When he, in an echo of the first movie, again, in the first movie, he goes to like the biker bar, doesn't he?
Yeah.
To get some coke and to speak to somebody he knows there. And this one, he goes to the social club, as it's called.
Yes.
Where Johnny Vang, who's the character who's taken his heart, but Johnny Vang's gone. And he busts that place up, doesn't he, as well? We get quite again, like, there's been some fights, there's been some blood splatters, there's been a shotgun up the arse. All right, I've got the level. And then we get to this social club, and they take it up a notch again.
Yeah.
in some of the dialogue and some of the characters which we get to see.
Yeah, it's it's quite quickly. Yeah, again, it's setting those levels because it's the social club. Okay, we're going to a social club. Bit weird, you know. Maybe they're going to be playing whatever stereotypical Chinese game they can think of. But no, yeah, it's just a sort of run-down house in the middle of the street, full of women with less than full clothing on, and lots of people who are enjoying it. Shall we say?
Yeah.
And yeah, it's the stereotypes are quickly sort of start to come out from there. I think is the polite way of saying it.
Yes. One character who's not enjoying their position is Bai Ling's character, called Ria, which I'm sure pleases one of our collective.
Indeed.
She is an interesting character, and it's an interesting performance. I don't know how much you know of Bai Ling. She is known to be a larger than life character, you know, in her existence as a person. So she's clearly been stunt cast in this, but this is where we get to meet her character, and she's beating on after Chev goes in and everything happens. She's beating on one of the pimp guys, isn't she?
Yeah,
whacking him in the nuts with the shotgun.
Was with a bicycle at first, I think.
Oh, is it? Okay, yeah, a couple of different. Yeah.
She goes. Whatever's to hand, you know.
What did you think of her character and her performance? Yeah. Okay, fair. That's it done.
Yeah. Larger than life.
Sure.
And it's not a lot of people would be able to get away with that character. There's a lot of stereotypes all rolled into one, right there, and they're not holding back. And I guess it's that question of when you're looking at what they're trying to do, and does it add to the film? Like, would it, if she wasn't in it, would the film be any different?
And the answer is yes, for sure. Yeah. Now, would it be any worse? It's a different question.
Yeah. Like, what does that character add? It adds, I think it adds a certain level of farce and ridiculousness to it. Would the film have been worse without her in it? No.
Yeah, probably. Yeah, sure. Your silence speaks volumes.
Yeah. And again, it comes back to that intentionality of it. That's the sort of question, like, how intentional was it? And if it was intentional, how knowing was it? Which you kind of have to gain from what does it add to the film. And a lot of it just seems to be there for the sake of it.
Yeah. Well, yes, they're button pushing, aren't they?
Yeah.
Because actually, before she becomes a character by herself in the movie, when Chev is like beating everyone up on the inside, we don't see it.
No.
Like windows smashing, people falling out. We get like a literal couple of Vietnamese soldiers, don't we?
Yeah.
With the old kind of straw triangle hats. It's such a weird moment that you can't help but laugh at it, which is what they're going for. But when you kind of start to break it down, like as you said, it could be taken so offensively.
Oh yeah.
Because then she's doing the whole Full Metal Jacket, you know, like me sucky sucky, me love you long time. She's doing all that kind of acting. I think I wrote down one of her lines when the backup comes and support comes in a car and they come to threaten her. She says, "This dude, my Kevin Costner, he gonna beat you off." So like, really funny, like the Bodyguard reference, comparing the Stath to Costner. All of this is really funny. The misalignment, of the words, the syntax of that's what the word I was searching for. The syntax of her sentence with the words not quite in the right order,
Yeah.
meaning the right things, is all clever and funny, but is also really stereotypical.
Yeah. Massively so.
Yeah,
Yeah.
definitely.
And yeah, there's a couple of lines. This is when sort of some of Statham's lines as well start building into it.
Yes.
There's a few things that he says there, then just which I have written down, but I don't actually want to read out. So let's just.
Oh, go on. You can read them out.
I'm not sure I want to.
You mean I'd rather stick my dick in a blender?
Yeah, there's that
when
one.
she offers sex, or when he says you're speaking Cantonese.
Yeah, that was the one I was
know.
thinking about.
They're I don't mind. I don't care. If the Stath is willing to say them, I'm willing to say them. Yeah, I mean, we're in danger. We're going to repeat ourselves all the way through this, I think, but only because it's a point we've got to keep coming back to.
Yeah.
They are really treading a line.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
But I can't lie, I laughed.
Yeah, I did as well. It's partly just out of the shock factor, the ridiculous factor, that it's like, because it does like turn it up to 11.
It's almost that, oh no, you didn't kind of reaction. Like,
almost,
what? I can't believe you said. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's the
You're
way
kind of shocked into it.
Yeah, the way that he says it as well. He says it through disbelief as well, because she stood there like doing, as you say, doing all the stereotypical things, and then
and really like physically overacting, isn't she, as well? Like all her
Yeah.
limbs are going, and
and she says, I'm clean like a baby. And he's like, what does that even mean? And then that's when he sort of leads into the lines, and it's like, it's out of sheer disbelief, and you're with him in that, what the fuck is going on here? Like, and then, so it does make you laugh, and then afterwards you're a bit like, oh.
yeah, that's exactly it. Haha. Oh, should I have laughed at that? Yeah, absolutely. That's the exact journey gone, but probably several more times throughout this movie that I have that same exact feeling. Oh no, maybe I shouldn't have laughed at that.
Yes. The laugh and the moment of regret immediately afterwards.
Yeah, that's true. That's really true.
What did that laugh say about me?
I don't know. What I couldn't find was like how much of her stuff was scripted or improvised and how much she was allowed to. What I did read was that they intentionally subtitled her after the fact. There was no intention in subtitling her character until they watched it back in the edit and were like, what's she saying? Huh? So they had to, they decided to make it part of the joke, because she's speaking in English with a heavy accent, to put their subtitles on. So again, there's another layer of like, this could be really offensive because she's speaking in English and you're choosing to subtitle her. It's another risky line they're walking.
It is, and it's for anyone out there who watches sort of a certain amount of American TV, a particular American reality as well. And there is a kind of a lot of people with a slight accent getting subtitled. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't watch a lot of reality, but there's a couple of things that I watch that are American based, and even like people who are like documentary series, and there will be people who are like the main people going through the entire thing speaking English, and it's the same person and they're one of the main people in it, but they will be subtitled through the entire thing even though they're speaking English.
Right. Yeah.
And there is a certain amount of knowing nod, I think, on that one.
Yeah. Okay. Fair. Yeah. That's good knowledge you're bringing. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even in British TV, we can be a little bit dodgy with that sometimes.
I'm sure.
But yeah, American TV in particular, I've noticed if you bring even the slightest of accent, which is, hilarious when you think about the amount of accents in America.
Sure. Yeah.
Like even just from a New York person talking to someone in Georgia, like good luck to both of them. But yeah, someone who comes from one of them foreign nations speaking English.
Yeah. Yeah. They definitely need the subtitles.
Yeah. Get the subtitle person in quick.
Yeah. They are creative though, how they write the subtitles. I really like how they do them throughout this movie. Like when any of the triads are talking, it's like different colors and at different positions on the screen and different fonts, and
Yeah.
they go all out to make it creative and interesting and fun.
Yeah, it adds a certain amount of, weirdly, it adds a certain amount of character as well. It's like,
Mm,
you know, I
it
mean,
does.
people in the group are always saying about comic books, like the letterers
Mm,
are often the unsung heroes because it can add a lot to a character. Just the slight differences or just the slight inflections and meanings, even though you can hear the words, changing things slightly, it adds something in your mind. You know, I
that's a
mean,
great shout. I hadn't even thought of that, but you're absolutely right.
there are probably
Yeah.
psychologists out there who will be able to tell me why that is, but even hearing the words, if you see it as well and there's a slight change in the word or a slight change in how a person's subtitles are written, it can make a big impact.
Mm,
And yeah, this again, it's something that they run with, and it that and it just goes to show, like, they're not doing this as a sort of ridiculous whatever. There is
mhm.
thought to it. They are
Yeah.
doing things on purpose.
It's actually more work, of course. Do you know what I mean? To just have
Yeah,
one font and one size and one color, you program that in and it's done. To have it
yeah.
on different positions on the screen and different font. Yeah, absolutely. So they are providing more work for the editor for themselves in
Hmm.
the final cut. Yeah.
Yeah. It's easy to watch this film and then just think, oh, no one really thought about what they were doing. But they did think about some things. Promise.
Yeah. I think they probably thought about everything,
Yeah.
but whether they thought about the repercussions of everything
No.
is another matter.
Yeah. I don't think they cared.
No, they definitely didn't care.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first 20 minutes, half an hour, it's basically like going on a tour of strip joints of various
Yes.
levels of, you know, I don't even know what the word is. Repute, maybe,
Yeah.
from the
Yeah.
social
Repeat's a good
club
one.
to
Yeah.
something a bit more established, shall we say.
Yes, because it's Enter Eve, isn't it? Or Re-Enter Eve.
Yes, good old Eve. Apparently
Yeah.
on tough times.
So I don't know if I missed it on this rewatch and I hadn't remembered or what. But it was only in reading afterwards that the film is set 3 months later.
Yeah, when I had kind of remembered that it was set a bit after, but they don't mention it at first.
They don't make it obvious, I didn't think.
No, Eve makes a comment that she thought he was dead. I was like, okay,
Mhm.
fair enough. We all did.
Yeah.
But I think it must be a good half hour, I think, until it's sort of mentioned that it's been a while.
Mm.
And then, I think it's another chunk later into the film where they talk about it being like a few months.
Yeah.
But it takes a while, and which is funny because I remember it. For some reason, I remember in my mind seeing him in a coma, which
Mm.
clearly just does not happen. Apparently, my
No.
brain filled that in somewhere. But it's very subtle. And yeah,
Comas are definitely too slow for this movie.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, they wouldn't bother with that.
No. Yeah, Eve's fallen on some hard times, hasn't she? And she's had to rely on her attractiveness, her sexiness, her ability to dance. I don't know whether all this existed in the first movie, but it does now. And we stumble across her accidentally, don't we, in a strip
Yeah,
club,
much to his surprise.
much to his surprise.
Yeah.
I did like the little touch that when she starts her act, I don't know if you picked up on this, she's wearing his Puma top from the end of the first movie.
Oh no, I didn't see that.
Now, I think because I watched the two movies like back to back, when he comes in later on in not the first time he sees her, when he sees her the second time in Crank, he's changed into a tracksuit. She's like, "What's this? Like, is that your new style?" And like, "Why are you wearing that?" And she's wearing that at the start of her striptease.
No, I didn't
So I thought that
notice
was
that.
quite a nice little nod, a nice little touch.
Yeah, that is a nice touch. Yeah, see, it's things like that. It shows they were paying attention.
They were.
Yeah.
spectacular shootout in the strip club.
Yes. I had to make a note of this bit because he shouts. So there's all thing going on. Like there's an argument in the background. Someone gets their elbow cut off because we're starting to learn that the triad who have done this with his heart.
Mm-hmm.
There's also another gang which we later learn about have the connection to this ferret.
Yeah.
They're all sort of after him for various different reasons and all this connections. And then we're starting to unpick all of this. So they're in the back having an argument. Meanwhile, in the front, Statham has found Eve. At first is sort of quite enjoying the show and then realizes that someone else is enjoying the show. So it gets a bit angry.
Yeah.
And then lots of people with guns come in.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them very specifically shouts, "We need him alive." And then very specifically moments later, everybody shoots everybody in the building.
Yeah.
Some of them with machine guns. I was a bit confused, I'm not going to lie.
No, maybe they thought Chev. No, you're right. Maybe they thought Chev is just bulletproof on top of everything else.
Yeah, maybe.
It's like Luke Cage or something. I don't know. Yeah, that's a great shout. I hadn't picked up on that, but you're absolutely right. We need him alive.
Yeah, basically. And there was like 6 of them on one side of the building. Some of them were machine guns, some of them were pistols. And am I remembering correctly? We made a comment that in the first one, not many like innocents in inverted commas die.
Yeah, we did.
This is the scene where we realize this is not true on this film.
Yeah. I think, we said not many incidents, but particularly none by Chev's hand.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's right.
But the body count here is definitely significantly higher. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And there's a lot of death in this scene.
There's a lot of death. There's some satirical breast augmentation deflation.
Yes.
So one of the strippers gets shot through both boobs and all the silicone comes pouring out.
Yeah, which I thought if you're going to make a joke at that point, that's the joke to make.
It's a good joke. Yeah, it totally lands.
Joke.
Yeah.
That was a good one. If you're going to have a shootout in a strip club, well done.
Yeah. I thought the music cue in this scene, but I think the music cues all throughout the movie are really good as well.
Yeah.
And very obviously retrospectively, very like James Gunn-esque, the music in this. That kind of almost contrapuntal, like you don't kind of expect that song in this moment.
Yeah.
I thought that's done really well in this movie too.
Yeah, there's a lot of that's a good shout. There's a lot of them that are kind of wrong but right.
Yeah, you'd never would have put it together with what you're seeing, but actually now they exist in the same world. Yeah, that really works.
Yeah, that's a good shout.
It's definitely become a feature of filmmaking more. I guess we look even further back, Tarantino did it as well. I'm sure other people have done it previous, but I saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Mutant Mayhem yesterday with my eldest, which is a great movie, particularly for anybody who really likes turtles, but it's a great movie anyway. But that definitely does it too, like unexpected songs at moments when action scenes and it's a slower song or it's a folk song or it's they know what they're doing. It's become quite a common feature, I think, in filmmaking.
Yeah, but it is done really well here. As you say, there's a lot of nice moments where it's the sort of disjointedness adds something to it. It adds to the story and adds to the sort of feeling of it.
Definitely.
Yeah, because you're going to have a big shootout. Not everyone in the room necessarily wants to have a big shootout. Apparently, the man shouting, "We need him alive," didn't. But this is where we got to.
Yeah. And then we have a lovely reunion between the Statham Eve, between Chev and Eve, the Statham Smart.
Yeah.
I say lovely, obviously, in an ironic way. So they escape in a police car.
Good old days.
Because the police turn up to the shootout. and Chev beats him up, steals a car with Eve and another stripper in the back, who seems to have been very turned on by the situation.
Yes, she's quite fond of Eve, it seems.
Yeah, I mean,
Very
I can't
quickly.
blame her, to be fair.
No. Yeah, it was peculiar.
Yeah, it's another one of those moments you're just like, this is a choice. Okay, this is a choice. You're going with it.
Yeah, it was bizarre because they're the two of them are trying to have this conversation and trying to work out what's going on.
Yeah, big reunion. Yeah.
All the meantime, she's like patting this woman off.
Literally pouring all over, isn't she? Yeah.
And the camera is very intent on showing how into her this woman is.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was an odd choice.
I did like the joke of Eve having a mobile phone.
Yeah, that was a good one.
And he's sort of like, where was that? Because there wasn't anywhere to keep it. Yeah, it was good.
Yeah. And also, especially after like the whole thing of the first film, she doesn't have a mobile phone.
Yeah. There's a nice callback.
Would you get a mobile phone? Call me back.
Yeah, because that's nice as well, isn't it? Because we get the other side of his phone call.
Oh, yeah.
So at the end of the first movie, he leaves this long message, doesn't he? Like, I wish we could have had our life together. And then we hear it on our answer phone.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Kind of what you would expect a message to be if someone was falling through the air.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah, that was a nice callback. I like that one. Yeah, I'm stuck on that car scene, for various reasons. It's just illustrative of a lot of it, in that they're not letting you settle on anything. It's almost like they wanted them to have this conversation, but they didn't want you to feel any mushy, happy feelings about it.
Sure.
So they were a bit like, okay, well, how can we break it up? How can we make it awkward? How can we, like, we could just have a shootout as they're driving along, but we've done that one. So
yeah,
what else can we do? It almost feels like they don't want to just sit in something. They want to make it slightly chaotic at all times. Well done, by the way.
I mean, they certainly achieved it.
They of all the things they can do, they can certainly do that one.
Because then, of course, we'll skip over. There's a porn rally, kind of pointless, but kind of a silly little, but
get some
silly little aside. Yeah, and very topical right now with actors on strike.
Yeah, absolutely.
But then, of course, we have to recreate the public sex scene.
Yes.
Now, we called out that first one for being problematic.
Yeah.
And the fact that at the start, Eve is very much no, and he doesn't just take no as the answer. He kind of forces is the wrong word, but he kind of coerces her, perhaps is a better word.
Yeah.
Until she decides she wants to, and then she does. But it was uncomfortable and didn't feel pitched right. What about this one? Is it less problematic?
I think it is less problematic because I think what we said about the first one is that, the lack of agency that she has over the whole thing. And it's, it's not something that she has any control or say over. And all of a sudden she's overcome and, whereas this time she's more in control. Like the doc tells him that, one of the ways to charge up this battery is, static if he gets friction, and then we get a nice moment with Chester.
He's back.
Yeah, and we have a nice moment with a little old lady. Lovely.
I mean, that is funny.
That was funny, yeah.
Rubbing up against the Woolly Cardi, yeah.
Yeah, not someone I recognise, but apparently she's been in tons.
Okay.
So if you're someone who likes older films, you may be like, oh, it's her. I wasn't.
Yeah, sure. Me neither.
But yeah, and then so he relays that he needs some sort of friction to charge the battery, friction on the skin. Just
sort of thinking about the body and where parts are, heart compared to penis, but all right, yeah, we'll go with it.
I mean, with him, it sort of seems to all be connected.
reaches to his heart, sure.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And then she kind of just gives him a knowing look and says, "Oh, friction." So it starts in the stands, and then they kind of fall down the stands, and they fall into the track with everyone watching, and everyone's cheering and screaming,
and a horse race going on at the time.
Yeah, and a horse race going on, and we get to see a close up of the horse.
Of course we do, just at the moment of release.
Yes, indeed. Just to illustrate why they might want his organ.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's less problematic because she has more control over it. She has more agency. You know, she's the one making decisions, and he's immediately like, oh, you know, as he would be.
Yeah.
So it's less problematic. It's a bit weird.
Very weird. I think cutting to a big horse penis,
yes,
as your character or character's orgasm is a choice.
It is a choice. Just, I wonder if that's sort of a, we can't show anything too much, but we can show a horse.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Yeah.
We have certain things we have to stay within, but for some reason we can show you a horse's penis.
Yeah.
So we shall. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe they were trying to make a point or something. Because it does try and be a bit more graphic than the first one.
It does. Yeah, there's several different positions, isn't it?
Yeah, more positions, and they use more blurring rather than, you know, things being obscured. So they're certainly hinting at things being more out in the open.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just weird, but it didn't make me feel icky afterwards like the first one did.
Yeah, it's definitely weird, and I think we've got to give the actors kudos because they filmed that for real on a racetrack.
Yeah,
I read, like, so that's proper mud and horse muck and God knows what else that they're acting on.
Yeah, I did read a comment from her saying she does not want to think about what they were rolling in that day.
Yeah,
probably not hygienic.
no, I wouldn't have thought so. But as you know, we know the Stath likes to do his own stunts. I'm sure he didn't mind this one.
Yeah, I'm sure he was well up for it. Yeah, I don't know. I don't know about you, but yeah, it made me feel less icky.
100%, 100%. I think almost he's the more reluctant one this time.
Yeah,
he's like kind of Eve, like I haven't really got time for this right now. I'm not sure. And she's not forcing herself on him like he was, but she definitely wants to be there and wants to partake in it from the start. So yeah, I agree with you. There's definitely a much more sense of agency there.
Yeah, which was an interesting moment for me because it was almost like the one criticism we had. Also, the one major criticism we had on the first film, and then in the second one, they did something about that, and then for the rest of the film, went surprise.
Yeah, sure. We fixed this part, but now we're really going to test you on everything else. Yeah, absolutely.
It was a bit weird because I had a moment of, oh, okay, fair enough, and then I'm sure there was this, I can't remember what scene it was, but I'm sure there was a scene like 5 minutes later when I was like, yeah, all right, whatever, like you tricked me.
Is it when so he then leaves Eve, who kind of goes out the picture really at this point, which is a bit of a shame. She has a smaller scene later on, but she's out of the picture in terms of connected to Chev. But he runs off and he finds the dog walkers.
Yes.
And he gets the so they're one of them is shocking their dog using a collar.
Yeah.
And the Stath that Chev puts it on. His acting in this scene is fucking phenomenal. I think is brilliant.
Yeah.
But I'm presuming it's the comedy he makes to the two gay guys, which got you right back to where the film needed you to be.
Yeah.
This was another one of those, oh fuck, I laughed at that and I probably shouldn't have done moments.
It's so he walks up to them. he's seeing what's going on. We have a couple of seconds of the two of them having an argument because they're sort of disagreeing about the use of the shock collar.
Yeah.
And then he very purposefully walks up to them and then calls them a pair of sausage Nigels.
Which I can't help it. It's funny. It's
I have
funny.
not heard that before.
No,
So
well, they've made it up, and it's great.
creativity, I'll give them that one.
Yeah.
But it's just what?
Yeah, I know. It's weird. You're right, because he's offended by the fact that one of them is shocking the dog, isn't he?
Yeah.
He's like, how dare you do this? He gets in his face and threatens him, and then thinks, oh, actually, I could use it. But yeah, the sausage Nigels, I think because it's so off the wall and weird and isn't actually a real slur as far as I'm aware.
Yeah, you hear it, you laugh, and you think, wait, was that offensive?
Yeah, exactly.
It must be offensive, but I've not heard it before. I don't recognize it. I can't get my head around why it's offensive, but it is offensive.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. That is the whole journey. It's definitely I mean, you probably heard it just then. It's my biggest laugh in the movie. It definitely got me. And I'm sorry if that offends people but yeah, I don't know. Something about it is funny.
Yeah, it is. It's just that it is that kind of shock and what?
Yeah.
And it's the way he says it as well, because you say like he's expressing anger towards them for what they're doing.
Mm-hmm.
And he doesn't, the way he says it, it's not said with like thorns on it or with malice or.
No, he's not homophobic. He's just using a potential slur to shock them.
Yeah,
I suppose.
He certainly.
And maybe that. Yeah, and maybe that's where we land in this whole movie, is that Chev isn't homophobic or racist or sexist or disableist, which I think we could probably label all those things on this movie.
Yeah.
But he uses, not all, the film uses all of these things at times to be transgressive, to be funny, to push boundaries without being ist about it.
Yeah. It's really weirdly done.
Yeah.
You kind of feel like, I don't know, I guess it's like when your grandma says something and you're a bit like, I should be offended by that.
Mm-hmm.
But she says it so nicely. I find it hard, but also no, grandma, no.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
It's kind of that weird moment. It's like, it would be if like a little old lady, like an 80-year-old lady, walked up to them and said that, you would have the same thing. You would laugh because it's just so unbelievable, but then you would also have the moment of no, grandma.
Yeah. That's the journey. You're absolutely right.
I don't know how they do it. I don't know how Jason Statham does it, because
but he does.
Yeah, he does. The character he's playing, with that script written and those words written down, any other actor would have probably read the lines and you would have been like, yeah, I don't like this guy.
Yeah, I'm not going to say that.
But yeah, there's just the way he manages to express all of it. You're a bit like, I don't know, you kind of just let it brush over you, and it feels shocking because it doesn't feel like it's him. He's saying it because of the situation, rather than, like you say, that you don't feel like he is an ist.
Yeah.
I
need to shock. I need to say something that's going to shock him in this moment.
Yeah.
And this is what I've come up with spontaneously. Yeah.
But yeah, it's certainly a very quick diver into, no, don't worry, we're still going to offend you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes. And I did make a note here that,
cool.
The cops running after and he's got the shot collar and he's shocking himself.
Mm.
And the dog has now attacked one of the cops, and he's like, yeah, I'm telling you, we're going to have a lawsuit here. And the two cops just run past. Like, one of you help, maybe.
And of course, where is the cop getting bit?
Right in the favourite piece.
Yeah, the cop is getting bit in the cock.
Yes.
Because everything is about cocks in this movie. Yeah. It's all about the sausage.
And then my most favourite, possibly of the whole film, we get a quick fade to black with some words written on, and then we transition. And you're like, you would sort of expect an hour later, 20 minutes later. It flashes up 9 seconds later.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? And this is another those moments that you talk about, like they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, sure. It probably took 9 seconds for that to flash up, for me to read it, and for it to go away again. Or at least close to.
Yeah, absolutely.
But yeah, they know what they're doing.
They do.
Messing with my head. But yeah, and then we meet Carlo's brother.
Yes.
Which was a moment for everyone. A moment of confusion.
Yeah, because it's his twin brother, because it's played by Efrain Ramirez, still the same actor. Yeah. And he is Venus in this movie, isn't he?
Yeah.
And he has full body Tourette's. A thing? I don't know.
I don't know, but they certainly go for it.
It's a thing in this, yeah.
Yeah, another one of those things that, was it done intentionally? Was it done knowingly?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's very purposeful when he has his attacks.
Yes.
He has one at the beginning to sort of, I don't know, as an explainer, as it were, so we understand. And then from then on, every time he has an attack, it's for a point, for a purpose. Like the first one is when they're on the bike and they crash. And then after that, it's either for some sort of comedic value, or like the one at the end, it somehow adds to the fight.
Yeah. So the crash is so Chev can get captured, isn't it?
Yeah.
And then later it's almost as if like the full body Tourette's is making him be a better fighter, or it's that kind of, that comedy slapstick gets him out of the situation, isn't it?
Yeah. Again, you feel like you should be offended by it. But yeah, they're doing it knowingly again.
Yes, they are.
Of all the ones that they've pushed, I think that one was a bit more, why did you do that? That didn't add to anything.
No, I think, we picked out the public sex with Eve in the first one. I think if we're going to pick any one thing from this one, it's this character and this decision.
Yeah.
I sort of get the Biling Rhea character. I think that kind of works in its own way. I get the sausage Nigels. This is the most problematic part, I think, of the movie.
Yeah. It's done for no other reason than for us to kind of laugh at him.
Yes, I think that's the difference. Yeah, you're right.
You're not laughing at the situation. You're not laughing at the slight bizarreness or the out of place of whatever it is, or the fact that they've turned it up to 20. They just put it in there to laugh at him.
Yeah,
which seems like that. Yeah, that's the difference, I think.
No, you're spot on, and it's a shame because in the first movie, Kalo was a cross-dresser, was feminized, wore makeup, and there was no comedy made of that. It was just who was his character. It didn't matter.
Yeah.
He was still somebody Chev trusted. He was still somebody, one of the two people he called upon that he needed to help him, and that was just, he was a transgressive character, and that was fine.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. Here it's very pointed. It's kind of, it's at you rather than with you.
Yeah. It almost felt like they needed something else. Like, yeah, in the first one, Kylo had that, but it wasn't made a point of. But that was his little thing.
Yeah.
And they needed to give his brother something.
We've done race. We've done gender.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. We've done sexuality. Oh, we haven't done anything to do with disability yet. Let's get it in there.
Yeah. Yeah. Although he did come up with one of my favorite lines, when Jason Statham asked him, like, they're talking because he wants to avenge his brother's death, and that, you know, he says, well, they're basically all dead. I did it. So there's a bit of a disappointment in his face. And he says, but there is one person I can't get to, the ferret. And he just looks at him and says, El Haron. Like, you know him. Like, no, that's just it in Spanish.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Fair enough. But it is that kind of, you expect that in the film. They say it in Spanish, and so therefore it means something. So,
yeah. Oh, no, they're connected, or
yeah. That's just how I say it in Spanish. Who is he? So yeah, he did come up with that. But yeah, otherwise the character's a bit, they almost felt like they just needed to bring the character back, but couldn't.
Yeah. It's a bit forced, isn't it?
Yeah.
The ferret, though, is Clifton Gonzalez Jr., I think his name is.
Yes, that sounds about right.
Clifton Collins Jr.
Right.
Who is a fantastic actor, did lots of different things.
Yeah.
And he brings a lot to quite a slight role, I think.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, from the first sort of appearance, he kind of, adds just a little bit of quirkiness and a little bit of, this isn't what I was expecting, and
actual threat, I think. Because he forces his general guy to cut both his nipples off. Yeah, which is grim.
Yes. Yeah.
So I think we probably said, I'm sure we did, but how like we kind of know Chev's going to be right in the first one, and then he's not. I know he dies, but we sort of know he's going to defeat all the bad guys on his journey.
Yeah.
But this one person didn't get this ferret, and because it's Clifton Collins Jr., who is an actor who can pull that off, he offers a bit of actual genuine malice, I think.
Yeah, I think you're right. Especially the way that they sort of weaved in the first one. There's a lot of, he's going against people that are altogether against him. In this one, there's a bit more sort of uncomfortable connections between them.
Yes.
They've got their own infighting and fighting between them and amongst them, and he's almost caught in the middle of it. So yeah, you do feel a bit more. Yeah, there's a bit more threat from this character, and yeah, the nipple thing. I didn't need to see that.
That's a good point, because the sole purpose of the triads is to get him for his bits. Literally. And the sole purpose of the ferret, of his group, is to get revenge for what happened to Verona. He's Verona's cousin? Brother?
Yeah, I think he's the brother. He's the third brother that no one knew about.
Isn't he?
Or that they didn't know about. Yeah, because he has the chain around his neck from their dad.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a nice moment. That was it just added a little bit of something. Because he made a big deal out in the first one about the two brothers and what they mean to each other, and then you suddenly drop this
surprise.
Third one. Yeah.
Surprise. Yeah. Before we get to the big shootout at the end, we've got to, of course, talk about when Chev finally catches up with Johnny Vang, though. So Johnny Vang's been running away from the whole movie with this little, like, cooler, this little like
Yeah.
red and white cooler, which we think has got his heart in. Turns out it's not. It's something else, which you never get to see in a kind of
Yeah.
Pulp Fiction briefcase style mystery. Who knows what it is? But people are repulsed when they see what it is. But Johnny Vang, who has one of the most punchable faces and is one of the most punchable characters
Yes.
in cinema, faces off against Chev in a wonderful scene.
Yeah. It's ridiculous, but also, yeah, it kind of fits. It's
It does.
just, it's stupid, but you can also, it's almost like an insight into the two minds of the people who are singularly focused on beating the utter crap out of each other.
Definitely.
And they,
And
yeah,
Chev's just had like a big shock, hasn't he? He's had like a big shock because they're like by a power station.
yeah, or power station, substation,
That's the word. Thank you. Yeah.
lots of electric.
Yeah. So I don't know whether it's meant to be Chev's mind or like whether Vang's hopped up on something, or as you said, like it's both of their amalgamations of, because it's kind of Power Rangers, which you could say is
Yeah.
Chev maybe, but it's kind of Kaiju Godzilla, which is Johnny Vang. So I don't know. It's a hilarious moment where we kind of cut to this really slow motion fight where whether it's the actors or what, I don't know, wearing big paper mache
Yeah.
heads of themselves. I think it's a really ballsy move
Yeah.
to stop your movie dead and go, here you go. This is what we're doing now.
Yeah. Yeah, it's really ballsy. It's really like having faith in your audience. Like that your audience, that they've got this far. They must be invested at least somewhat into what we're doing. And it's just, yeah, it's that complete suspension of reality.
Yeah.
At this point, it's, you know, we're going full on here, and it works. It shouldn't. It really shouldn't work,
But
it does.
it does. And maybe because they've set us up through some other things earlier in the movie, you know, with the 8-bit and stuff, we kind of accept that we're going to come out of reality at certain points. But yeah, it is. Yeah, the only word I can think to use is ballsy, just for them to think like we're going to do this. Maybe it's another moment like the Verona head in a jar where they were like, we're going to write this, and they're going to say no, right?
Yeah.
They're going to say we can't do it, and nobody did, because the paper mache heads look cheap. They're not well made, but again, on purpose. It's all like it's all deliberate. It's hilarious.
Yeah, and that is, you know, maybe it's one of those of they could have tried to done this big drawn out fight with, you know, they've built so much up to it. They could have had this big drawn out fight with the two characters, and but even that sort of thing, like a head on head fight between the two characters, you kind of have to suspend your disbelief slightly for a long drawn out fight of that. So it's almost like they've gone, well,
yeah,
if we're going to do it, why not just, you know, like, as you say, just go for it.
Yeah. I mean, that's been, you know, how many times has that been done? And it will still get done over and over and over. Who's done this before? Nobody.
Yeah. And then it switches back to reality, and he's just on top of him punching him. Like it probably was, the whole thing was probably just a couple of minutes of, you know, a couple of fists being thrown, and then he got on top of him and they were just punching him, and that was it. But in their head, and you know, in what the film wanted, it needed a big fight. So big fight.
Yeah.
Let's get giants.
Big fight. Yeah.
Let's have them smash each other with pylons and crush things, and why not?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I love it.
It's the stand-up moment of the movie, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
probably of the two movies, really.
Yeah, I think that's the point where it full out says we know what we are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like, yeah, that is what you are.
Swiftly followed up by a couple of scenes of quite creative torture, I would say. The Stath being dragged behind the speedboat
Mm,
and then having his balls electrocuted.
nice. It's all about
Yeah,
the balls.
back to it. Although, I wonder whether they were stunt balls or Stath balls. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I don't imagine that's one that he particularly wanted to volunteer
yeah.
for.
I think I'm needed to discuss
Yeah.
the next scene over there.
Bit busy that day, sorry.
Yeah. And then we get the big third act shootout, don't we? How do you think that compares to the first movie?
Oh, that's an interesting question.
Mm.
Because in the first one, we have Don Kim comes and
Mm-hmm.
saves the day. We have a big shootout. We've now got to this point. Don Kim is no more.
Yeah, we did forget to mention, didn't we? He wasn't earlier, and Stath took him out in his limo, didn't he?
Yeah, they had sort of a nice little chat, and I think that's where we do get. That's where we get. I think one of the biggest lines that made me go, "Ooh."
Mm.
They're talking about it's Venus, isn't it, Carlos' brother?
Mm-hmm.
And he has an episode inside the limo.
Mm-hmm.
They kick him out, and I think that it's at that point. I don't know if it's Don King or one of the other ones. What does it says? He says your friend has the gay condition.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
think it was in that car scene. It was in one of the other car scenes, and that just sort of illustrates the whole thing about the way they dealt with that character. It's just completely missed the mark entirely. But yeah, and then Don Kim, by Dong, you're no more. We get some of the exposition of what's going on. So he can no longer come and save the day.
Mm-hmm.
But we do have the moment of vengeance, and Venus comes with his friends, and
yeah, Rhea's part of the crew.
Yeah, Rhea's there. And then they sort of instigate the big shootout, and we have the head in a jar. In the first one, I think the big shootout is kind of secondary because it's
agreed.
Don Kim and everyone. It's kind of going on in the background. Whereas in this one, because we've got the characters that are trying to get vengeance, and it's more the side characters that have been wronged that are taking part in it. It feels it's more the event, and it's almost like Statham is almost secondary to that. He's kind of
that's
got
interesting.
his little
side mission,
of what he's trying to do, but the main thing is the big shootout.
Yeah, that's interesting because he's given up by this point, hasn't he? Because he's learned that the leader of the tribe has already got his heart.
Yeah.
So he's just on a mission now, just a bit like in the first one again, of course, where he's on a mission like to see out what he needs to complete before he dies. So yeah, now it's to re-kill Verona, to get rid of Ferret, to resolve the situation. Yeah, that's a really good point, where he's the kind of secondary element of this. Yeah.
Yeah, and then all the big things are happening around him. And then, that happens, and then he gets focused on the fact that his battery's gone again. So he's going for the high voltage. You get the moment.
Yes.
Of, that's the name of the film.
Yeah. And he gets set on fire.
Yes, he does. Yeah. But I think the gunfight, the whole, it kind of slightly gets let down again by the one thing that they don't deal with properly, because this is where he has another episode, and in the middle of, he's shooting at them and runs out of bullets, it goes up to fight, and then he has an episode, and then it somehow adds to the fight.
Yeah.
And then that's how he gets the upper hand. And then that was the moment I went, oh. kind of let me down slightly at that point.
Yeah, they're sort of the. I think this one is better. I do agree with you. I think I can feel the influences here. I can feel John Woo. I can feel like 80s Arnie actioners like Commando in this. But
Yeah.
I do think this third act in both movies is probably the weakest part of the movie. They've sort of run out of steam a little bit. I mean, the helicopter stuff's cool in Crank, but the shootout on the rooftop, that kind of classic big action moment, feel like the weaker parts of both movies.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's almost they build up to something and then it's almost like they don't know how to do the big set pieces.
Yeah.
They can do the like fly by the seat of your pants, let's run around and do crazy things, but get loads of them into one space where you have to get the timing of everything right and you have to get all the different angles right. And yeah, maybe that's their weakness because it just
it's a good shout.
Doesn't come together properly.
It's a tough skill. Not that I've got any experience, but it must be a tough skill to manage that. And you can tell the good action directors from the bad because they do that stuff well. I did read they didn't ever use second unit directors on these movies.
Right.
So that's when you bring in people if you've not got enough to do, or if you need somebody with a particular expertise, somebody who's experienced in that world. Maybe they needed it.
Yeah.
They needed a second unit here to get better coverage, to use that expertise and how to film these scenes. Yeah, it's a good shout.
Yeah, because it's almost like just as they build up to something, they suddenly jar away from that into the smaller bits again, and it's back into the big, and it doesn't quite work. Like obviously, you know, you can do that. You know, you have your big set piece fight, but you have to keep focus on your main characters. But the way they do it is a bit more jarring because we suddenly run to him holding the head, and then we go to the little fight, and then he has his episode, and then we go to the high voltage, and it just doesn't connect into the bigger thing that's happening.
Yeah. No, I think it's a good shout.
Which is a shame.
Absolutely.
It almost got there.
Yeah, it's better.
Yeah.
Maybe by the threequel, which we never got, sadly, they would have got it spot on.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. We haven't spoken about the Stath much, really, but I think because he's just doing everything we know that he can do and he's recreating this character again. Do you think he does anything particularly outstanding here or different? Does he add layers to Chev, or do you think it's just kind of another classic, solid Stath performance?
I think it's fairly solid. I think he does the boundaries that they push. He does add more to it because of the way that he deals with that. You know, like I was saying before, you could give this to a different actor with the same script and it would land very differently.
Do you think that's something we spoke about a lot, is his kind of charisma and his inherent kind of likability and chemistry with people? Do you think that's part of it?
Yeah, I think so. I think you've got to have that foundation. You know, there are other action heroes which, you know, I can't think of right now, but if they try to do it because they didn't have that foundation, it would just land weird and it would come across fake.
Yeah, have Mel Gibson saying these lines. That's definitely has a different feel.
Yeah, especially now.
Yeah. No, I hear you. Yeah.
And you know, for the people that haven't seen it and are probably very confused about everything we've said, like, we've only just touched on the lines that he says that could be really offensive.
Yeah.
There is so many of them. And the fact that we haven't touched on all of them kind of says something.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, I think he adds a lot more. Well, I wouldn't say a lot more, but a bit more depth to the personality of the character that is going through this ridiculous stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and let's face it, it's a ridiculous script. It's a ridiculous.
It is ridiculous
film.
script. Yeah.
Like the fact that he was able to do that does say something.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because we discussed some of the other possible casting choices, didn't we, in the first one? We said it could have been Nick Cage, and it would have been great, but it would have been a very different movie. It could have been Johnny Knoxville, which makes sense because this is kind of Jackass.
Yeah.
It's a kind of a movie version, a scripted movie version of Jackass, but again, would have been very different. So we're sort of back on that world, aren't we? Where like really this needs to be the Stath, and now we know they've also written the lines around his performance style and the fact that he's English, which I didn't know before, and I could do some Cockney rhyming slang. And
yeah, if Johnny Knoxville got his hand on this one, it would have been a very different film.
Yeah, which, you know, back to the start of what we were talking about, if it had been a different director and then Stath said no, maybe that's what we could have got.
Yeah, it would have been full on. Probably it would have been full on offensive for being offensive.
Sure. Yeah. Because he has his charm in his own way.
Yeah.
But not in a. Yeah, I hear what you're saying.
It's charm with a spike.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would have just. I think it's that underlying what isn't being said, and it's hard to kind of put your finger on. But with Statham, what isn't being said is his frustration. With other actors, what wouldn't have been said? Question mark.
Yeah.
And it's hard to build on that just from the words. Like you say, if they've built this based on his performance, that makes more sense because they can understand that he can do these things without it being bad.
Yeah, we can get away with it pushing it over here because the State's going to bring it back here, and he's going to absolutely. I mean, these are some of the words which Taylor described Jason Statham as. Seeing this 10 years later interview, what was it like working with him? So he said he was professional, he was super funny. He says he was a great guy to be around on set. He's humble, he's grateful for the position, and he's hardworking. So that's who they were writing for. So they probably felt like they could get him to say this, get him to call them that, put him in this position where he could be deemed racist or homophobic because of who he innately is. He'll draw you back. He'll save you from that brink.
Yeah. I mean, just quickly scrolling through my notes. I mean, there are some lines here that the only reason they're in there is to try and offend someone. Like when he comes up across Don Kim drives up in his big limo as he's been chased by cops and then takes him away. And the line that he has is, "Did I drop some change or did I hear a chink?" There is only one purpose for that line.
Yeah.
But somehow he gets away with it.
Because but I think the great example of what it is, because he's only saying that to push the buttons of Don Kim because he needs to in that moment, not because he's actually going around being racist to people all the time.
Yeah.
But in that moment, I'm in a situation I've got to do something to win the power back.
Yeah. And it's all of that is the unsaid thing.
Yeah.
Behind how he says it. And that goes a lot to say just how good he is at what he does, because how do you portray all of that you just said without saying anything?
That, you
can't really teach that.
You can't, and this couldn't have been Statham's first movie. It needs to be, at this point in his career, he's earned that, and he's been not quite as extreme in the first one. And yeah, I think it's writing to his strengths, isn't it?
Yeah. And you need to have the confidence in yourself to be able to pull that off.
And to know that you've not lost all your fan base because you've offended 90% of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, not many people that don't get offended by this one.
No, there's not.
No.
Which is probably a good thing that they didn't test it. I read that they just didn't test it at all. They were like, why bother? Like, everyone's going to say something they don't like about it, or they're going to call out a scene and say that it shouldn't be there. Like, there's no point testing this. Let's just release it as is. Wise move, that.
Yeah. And I read as well, they didn't give any advance copies to any critics at all.
No, I heard that too, yeah.
Which probably a good move.
Yeah.
That probably would have trashed it quite quickly. I can imagine the headlines coming out of that one. Even if it's not necessarily what the critic was thinking, but you can see in the process of writing a review, then it going to headline, and then the headlines coming out, and then the snippets being brought out. Just
absolutely,
that process.
The kind of clickbaitness of it, which I know that wasn't probably a thing then, but yeah.
Yeah, but it still had sort of, even in written in papers and stuff,
yeah, absolutely,
word gets out.
It does. Yeah. I think it was reviewed roughly the same as the first one. But yeah, I think it has much more opportunity for people to pick certain bits out in order to highlight them, for sure.
Yeah. I mean, it would have only taken like one paper somewhere or one website somewhere to quote something in particular.
Yeah.
And for it to get a bit of momentum, and then that would have been the end of it.
Yeah, definitely.
Or possibly it would have, pushed it to a bigger audience because, that's what people are like.
Yeah, but also maybe not the right audience. It's the risk there as well, isn't it?
Yeah, it becomes a favourite to a certain kind of person.
Yes, which it might be anyway, but you can't control that.
No.
I certainly don't think they intended that.
No.
I think they're smart guys, and I think they know what they were doing. And whether they push it too far at times, which I think we've argued they have, and they've made mistakes along the way. I think they know that I do think this is a transgressive movie rather than an offensive movie.
Yeah. We've sort of mentioned a couple of the ones where they maybe failed to hit the mark on. But yeah, I think for the most part, like, it's all, like you said from the beginning, it's the intention and how knowing were they and what were they trying to get out of it. And I think there is sort of that weird point where people will accept that they're not necessarily making fun of you, they're making fun of the way that people make fun of you.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. It's almost the calling it out. Yeah.
And I think this does sort of cross that line in places and makes it a little bit more softer than it might otherwise be.
Yeah, I agree. So right back towards the start, we spoke about like their intent. You said again, their intentions. What sort of movie is this going to be? So I read that Taylor sees this as a requel, and the film he used to best exemplify that is Evil Dead to Evil Dead 2, where essentially Sam Raimi made the same film, but made it, inverted commas, depending on what you believe, bigger and better because he could now. He had the skills, he had the budget, he had the... So that's how he feels about High Voltage, is that it is essentially Crank again, but it's the film they would have made the first time if they could, if they'd had the freedom and the money and the experience. Do you buy it?
I think I do. Because there are so many similarities, the basic beats are there, and they have kind of pushed it in ways that they didn't before and maybe intentionally or not fixed some of the things that didn't
Mhm.
hit in the first one. You know, whether that was intentional or not, who knows?
Mm.
But it does feel like, yeah, it does feel like it's almost, what would you do if you had that little bit more experience and a little bit less oversight? How would you do it again?
Yeah.
And this is what you get.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So should there? Yeah, go on. Yeah.
I was just going to say, I think the fact that they've brought Kylo's brother in is almost that thing that would tip it over to the edge to me to say they did just want to make it again.
Yeah.
Because that was almost just, we need that character back because he was in the first one.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Everyone else, Eve included, kind of makes sense. You need to wrap up that. She needs some closure.
Mm.
Yeah. He was totally an add-on.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, that is fair. So we never got a part 3. Do you think there should have been one? What would they have done?
Wow. I mean, at the end of it, they do manage to stick his heart back in.
They do. So yeah, we don't get any kind of like cliffhanger. Like they let us know, don't they? On this occasion, it's over the end credits, don't they?
Hmm.
That because the film ends with him on fire, sticking his middle finger up at the screen,
Yeah.
as if like "fuck you, this is it, it's over." And then you're right, over the end credits, we get the heart surgery, don't we? Yeah.
Yeah. So there is that little,
Mm.
you know, it could happen possibly, but he's got his heart back.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he was on fire, but yeah, I mean, what's left? They're all dead, unless there's like a fourth brother, or
Yeah, sure.
you know, Don Kim has a cousin somewhere,
Well, they
or
kill the triad leader, don't they, to get the heart back?
yeah, so maybe the
Played
triad
by
might be.
David Carradine in another kind of knowing moment,
Yeah.
because he's obviously a white guy playing a non-white guy, but he was a white guy playing a non-white guy in Kung Fu back in the 70s.
Hmm.
So again, it's a very like stunt casting, very knowing moment, which again tells me they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. I mean, would you have watched a Crank 3?
Would I have watched it? Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Would I have watched it in the cinema? No, probably not.
Mm.
Yeah, I would have watched it. Could they have pulled it off again? I mean, it's hard to see how you would go from there, really. But
Is he
it's
getting new skin? Maybe is that what it is?
yeah, maybe. So, yeah,
Reskinning.
yeah, they had to take his skin off to make it heal properly, and then someone stole his skin, so he has to go and get it back. Or
Yeah.
yeah, I just
It's
don't.
just that, that Robbie Williams Rock DJ video. It's just Jason Statham like that.
Yeah, I mean, maybe that was it. Maybe that was the other part to
Hmm.
it. Maybe it is Robbie Williams. There you go. Yeah, I think it's one of those, like, I mean, they always say it, don't they? If the right script came along, the right project came along,
Yeah.
but I don't see how.
You never know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. No, I think given the direction, if rewind time, if the first one was erased from existence,
Mm-hmm.
and then 2 was the remake, and 2 was in place of 1. I know I'm very much changing history. Then yeah, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But they're kind of boxed into a corner now.
Yeah. Yeah. Agreed. Yeah, it would be interesting to see what they could come up with. Even if it was just like a script or an elevator pitch, just to know what the hook would be.
Yeah.
The Chinese poison, the electric heart. What's the hook for part 3? I'd be really fascinated to know what that is.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't even. I couldn't even come up with something.
No, I toyed with the idea of putting you on the spot and making you, and I thought that was, but then I had plenty of lead in to think of something myself, and I couldn't come up with anything, so I thought that was cruel.
Yeah, I mean, you could do that, but that would be a lot of dead air.
Yeah.
So yeah, maybe just add in like 20 minutes of silence here to illustrate
Yeah.
my thinking, and then at the end of the 20 minutes, I'll just go, oh,
Yeah.
you know.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Because it would have to be something completely different, and that then it's just that doesn't make sense.
Yeah. Yeah, the concept's gone then, isn't it, really?
Yeah. Then it's like the Crank cinematic universe.
You
know.
Although Chev versus John Wick, I'd watch it.
Yeah, I'd watch that.
Tony says he wants. I don't know if you've seen Jolt with Kate Beckinsale.
Oh, I don't think so. No.
It kind of she's got like an electric pack which is set to her nerve endings to try and she gets in like for impulse control. She gets like jolted.
All right.
So of course, high voltage jolt. There'd be a
Yeah.
natural kind of crossover there.
Yeah. Yeah. They would have to probably base it off one of the other characters.
And
Um,
then who's turning up anyway?
Yeah.
You're here for the Stath, aren't you? Really?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, there's no way you can lead it on now that they've boxed themselves into this corner of Crank is about, run Lola run plus insanity. Yeah, that's as good as I've got, I'm afraid.
So two is enough, is what you're trying to tell me.
I think so, but I'm open to offers. If people want to come to me with an offer, then I'm open to it, because I've now turned myself into the decision maker.
All right, I'm going to read a couple of letterbox reviews if that's all right before I get your final word. Fantastic. So the first one is from Raul Marquez. He says, anyone who's seen just the first one must have a hard time believing this, but this follow-up almost makes that film feel tame, meditative, and politically correct by comparison. It's disgusting, vile, reprehensible trash of the highest order, catapulted to guiltily enticing entertainment through post-production furiosity and shamelessly indulgent shock value. It's not every day you see an entire motion picture that, for all accounts, was shot exclusively at noon on broad sunny days, and it's genuinely unbelievable that this screaming lapse of judgment fits weirdly nicely into the proposed sociopathic aesthetic. This is smart. Statham's performance in both pictures should straight up be considered among the likes of Brando, De Niro, or even Bogart, as these resounding, unwilling, and transcendental experiments on a previously uncharted extremity of the action hero's uber macho debauchery. Now, in all seriousness, that kaiju homage is the dorkiest, most adorable thing I've ever seen. Even if you don't have the stomach or the abstraction necessary to endure this whole thing, I strongly urge you to watch it. It's legitimately blissful. So I think he's playing with us in his review too.
Yeah.
Smart. Fuck it. Just watch the kaiju bit.
Yeah, but I mean, basically.
Yeah. Slightly less positive, Matthew Noble says, wow, that was disappointing. Where Crank was a relentlessly paced and surprisingly engaging action movie, High Voltage seems astonishingly,
easy for you to say.
Exactly. Ill-conceived by comparison, despite having a rock-solid premise. Is inconsistently plotted, lazily filmed, has some of the worst sound mixing I've ever heard, and shoves in a couple of annoying side characters for good measure. That Asian chick was seriously getting on my nerves, as was the Tourette-stricken brother. And where Neville Dean and Taylor's insane directorial choices served only to make the original even better, here they seem like they're there to compensate for the comparative shittiness of the rest of the movie, like a thick layer of icing spread across a very thin cake. Still, I laughed several times, and Statham was amazing in it, so it wasn't all bad.
Okay, fair enough.
Yeah, at least our boy gets called out at the end.
Yeah.
Sean Gilman says Neville Dean and Taylor take all the fun out of the first movie and replace it by pushing that film's least appealing elements, its casual racism, misogyny, and homophobia, beyond the limits of good taste. Gone also is the bright candy-colored Los Angeles of the first film, replaced by the dirt grey palette that made Paul W.S. Anderson's Death Race so dull as well. That's something I don't agree with. Whether this is intentional, exposing the ugliness at the heart of the action genre, or simply an extreme indulgence, man, I cannot speak. An indulgence is too early to say. So another not so positive review, sadly. This one I did find had more to say, that had more broader reviews than the first one did.
Yeah.
It's either like, fuck yeah, or it's, oh, no. Whereas most people kind of understood what the first one was doing.
Yeah. I think like we were saying, it very much depends on how much leeway you're willing to give them and how much you're willing to read into what's going on.
Yeah.
Some of what's being said there is hard to disagree with.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to say, are they missing the point? But it's because they're not, because that is the point. The point is to sort of upset people and to blur those lines. So it's...
And you either go with it or you don't. Mm.
Yeah, it's kind of one of those weird films of it's almost there for the negative reviews, if that makes sense.
Oh, yeah. I don't think Neville Dean and Taylor would give a shit about people saying this about their film. They'd be like, and what? That's what we wanted, yeah. Yeah,
No
I mean, in terms of
we got paid for it. Done.
Yeah. In terms of the look, he mentioned, it had been washed out, been greyed out, and there wasn't a bright colours. I mean, I did read that as definitely was their intention was to do that because they wanted the look to be gritty and, in inverted commas, real, whilst the film went even more big and outlandish and absurd, that it felt like this absurdity could actually be happening. So that was a conscious choice of theirs.
Yeah. Which you can understand why.
Yeah, it didn't work for that reviewer, which is fine. That was what they were going for.
Yeah. As a good friend of ours says, horses for courses.
Indeed, he does. Not enough anymore. Well, I'm sure he says it all the time, but we don't get to hear him say it enough.
Yeah, which is a shame.
Right, I'm going to blitz through two more if you don't mind.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, Dennis Duffy says, cranks, lol, every vile element found in the first movie up to its maximalist breaking point. The definition of vulgar, reveling in the trashiness of this concept and the grungy low-budget style. Where I wanted more of the absurdity that Neville Dean and Taylor only gave us glimpses of in the first, here they frequently push this premise into the realm of some form of unhinged surrealism. Occasionally, this even rivals the excess and toxicity of a Michael Bay film and shows nothing but contempt for humanity. The best part, though, besides the kaiju brawl, or Jason Statham wearing a shock collar, or when he sticks a shotgun up a guy's ass, and you won't believe this, is when Glenn Howerton shows up again. Always a delight seeing that 5-star man. So he's the actor who played the nurse in the first one.
Yes.
When he's looking for the adrenaline shot, and he's having a therapy session in this one. Which ties totally into what you were saying about like collateral damage, like people dying that don't need to die.
Yeah.
In the first one, he's threatened and he gives him the epinephrine and then he goes. In this one, he gets an accidental bullet to the head.
Yeah. After the most ridiculous, like it ricochets like 10 times. And then we cut away for a bit. And then they have this very awkward therapy session. And then, he just suddenly, he gets up all ready to go and tackle life and...
Yeah, life is over.
Yeah.
All right, bringing us home is Lou Shoemaker. Crank High Voltage is like sitting in a disgusting strip club that's full of mosquitoes while people scream racist jokes in your ear. And the action sucks too. The whole movie seems designed to make people go, can you believe they put that in a movie? And a disappointing amount of people bought it. Statham doesn't fare any better than anyone else in this film. Honestly, the whole thing is an embarrassment from start to finish for everyone involved, as far as I'm concerned. He does have one kind of funny moment when he puts on an electric dog collar and acts like a dog every time he gets shocked. Half a star, very disappointed.
Half a star.
Yeah, brutal.
Yeah. I mean, he's not wrong.
Once again, yeah. Yeah.
It's hard to disagree with that review.
He's not been able to get on board with what they were intending.
Yeah.
But have you? So, Crank was a classic in your view. Crank High Voltage. Is it still a classic? Is it worth catching? Or is it for completists only?
See, this is difficult.
The sound of contemplation.
Yeah. I think it's in the worth catching.
So why do you feel within the Stath's filmography it's a step down from Crank? Like Crank you have to watch. This one you don't have to, but you do if you want to.
Because I think it's borderline. I think this is because it's a lot of the same. I think is where it kind of has a wobble. You know, for his performance, he does show what he's capable of here in so many different ways. But a lot of it he's already shown in the first one. And because so many of the beats are the same, it's difficult. If you could lump them both together, I would say you have to watch one of them.
Sure.
If you're going to watch stuff by this guy, watch one of these. You have to.
Yeah.
Maybe it is just because it came after.
Yeah.
It's ranking slightly lower. It's a difficult one because, yeah, his quality in it is quite clear. And it's as good as the first film. It has its issues again, but I think it is something that to be watched. But if you've already watched the first one, do you need to watch this one? Not necessarily. Yeah.
It's not progressing his career. It's not progressing him per se. So therefore it's not, you need that first one to see where he's at that point in his career and, oh, he can do this too. He can really push himself. But this isn't pushing him any further.
No. And I think the Marmite-ness of it as well, that could give people the wrong direction. Like you could watch, if you were doing this, watching them in order, you could almost sort of go through his filmography and hit this point and think, oh, like if this if this hits you the wrong way, you could just go a bit, oh, what's happened to him? Done. Like, has he gone a bit of a wrong one?
Yeah. I hear you.
Yes, it's a difficult one though.
It is, and when you compare it to like the Evil Dead, I mean, Evil like comparison that Taylor brings up himself, I would always say of the two, watch Evil Dead 2. But there are, of course, there's purists out there's people who believe the more horror angled first one is the better one. Yeah, it's a difficult one. I mean, Taylor would say you're an idiot and you're wrong. You've got to watch this one. But he just made it. What does he know?
Well, yeah.
Once he's finished making it, he's handed it off to us. It's up to us to decide. But he literally said in an interview, it's like, well, if you say Crank 1's better than Crank and High Voltage, and you just don't get it, man. Well, you know.
If you were asking me if this was back to the filmography of Taylor,
sure,
and you asked me which one of these you needed to watch, then yeah, I would say the second one because this is more illustrative of them.
Interesting, yeah.
But I think if you were looking at Statham,
which we are.
That's the rumor I've heard. Then, yeah, I think this one could rub you up the wrong way.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to watch one of them, watch the first one, just so you don't get pissed off at him.
Yeah, no, great argument. I love that. So, season 30, back to filmography. Neville Dean Taylor, or just Taylor and everything, because they split up now. However I would decide to do it, both together, and then their separate filmographies all in one. We take High Voltage over Crank, but as this is a Stathology, it needs to be Crank over High Voltage. Fair.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well argued.
Yes.
Bro, thank you, mate. I think that was in depth. That was fascinating to talk about so many different elements of this film, which is 90 minutes. And I think this podcast is going to be longer than the film itself. But because it offers so much to talk about.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. There's a lot there. It makes you sort of challenge yourself, challenge films, challenge them, challenge life. Him. It's a daft little thing that somehow does a lot.
Yeah, definitely. There's a considerate amount of subtext to this.
Yeah.
Very sort of slick surface movie. There's a lot going on underneath there.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, you could do film studies classes just on this, just like on the way that it references, like you've pointed out, the things that it references, that things movies have done in the past, or kind of takes the mickey out of different things that are happening at the same time. There's a lot here if you want to look, whether or not that was intentional or they just having a laugh, who knows. But yeah, if you want to, there's a lot here.
Yeah. That beauty of art, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But once it's out there, then it's up to us to find those things we want to find. And as we've read those reviews, and it's nice to have positive and negative. I think we have to reflect that that's out there. Some people will get from it what they want, and some will be, as it sounds, properly offended by it, which we kind of knew going in was going to be the case. Yeah,
and like we said, we laughed and then questioned ourselves. So it's not like we disagree with these people.
No, not at all.
But yeah, I mean, there's some sort of life lesson in there, people. Question yourself.
I like that. My final question for you, look at that.
Very good. Good
smooth. Segue. Is what else can people expect from you? This is coming out on the 21st of August. So you've been quiet for a while now. What's going on in your world? Any other guest appearances coming up, or a resurrection of anything that you can tell everybody about?
Well, yeah, I'm hoping to do some resurrections. There are no dates set in stone, as it were. Yeah, it's watch this space. If the right script comes along, then we'll see. But yeah, no, I'm hoping to kind of bring things back. My current focus has been on the newsletter for the Pop Culture Collective. So yeah, if you want to keep up to date with lots of lovely independent creators such as this fine person here, look for the Pop Culture Collective newsletter. That comes out weekly. Sign up. Lots of little bits in there. That's my main focus currently. But otherwise, superdummy.co.uk will be where I post things when I finally get my act together.
Fantastic, thank you. And obviously I'll make sure I put that in the show notes too for everyone to follow.
Thank you very much.
Bro, yeah, it'd be great to hear your stuff back on the airways, because whether it's your more investigative stuff, if that's the right word, into kind of the world of the geekdom, they're always really interesting, no matter who you've got on or what the topic is, or whether it's more fun stuff when you're doing the kind of battles, which I've taken part in, the battle royales between certain geeky categories. Yeah, you managed to hit at both ends of the spectrum, I think, really well.
Oh, good. Thank you very much. Yeah, we need to do a rematch with you and Ria, because you tied, didn't you? I think
we did tie. It was never settled. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, I need to do a rematch.
I get to pick the topic for the rematch too, so I'll be bringing it.
Yeah, that's true.
Mm.
Oh, there you go. Well, watch this space.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you, mate, and thank you everyone else for listening and partaking in this journey with me through the Stath filmography. That, of course, was Crank High Voltage. Next up in a fortnight is 13, with Math making his first appearance on the show. And then following that is going to be The Expendables with Max, who's coming back for his first time since Ghost of Mars, which was the Stath's 4th movie. So we're getting into the kind of later period Stath now with some of the bigger franchises coming up too. I'm Jack's Musings, and that's JACS, and you can find me on Twitter, where I am most active. You can also contact the show directly on Twitter under the name Back to the Filmog. Make sure you use the hashtag Follow the Filmography. I'm also a proud member of the Comics in Motion family, a super place for the world's greatest people, dedicated to bringing you podcasts on a variety of geeky topics. So please make sure you take the time to search, subscribe, and rate our shows whenever and wherever you listen. Until next time, be excellent to each other and make sure you take the time to treat yourself too. I am Jack signing off. Yippee-ki-yay, movie lovers. Cut.